Hello and welcome to Pixel Magic Tutorials. I am your host Geekman, and today we're going to learn how to create rainbow watercolor text in Photoshop. Now, a couple of assumptions that I'm making right off the bat. Number one, I am using Photoshop CC 2017. If you don't have 2017, then some of the effects may not work as expected. Second, I am using Windows. If you're using a Mac, then when I say hit the Control key on your keyboard, that means hit the Command key. And when I say hit the Alt key on the keyboard, that means hit the Option key. So with that out of the way, let's get started by hitting Control N on the keyboard to bring up the New Document dialog box. And let's create a brand new document. Let's name it Rainbow Watercolor Text, because that's what we're making. The width is going to be 3840 pixels. The height is 2160 pixels. The resolution is 150 pixels per inch. RGB color mode 8-bit. Custom color background. I'm just using black. We're going to change it. It really doesn't matter. Adobe RGB 1998 and square pixels. Let's hit create, and we are now ready to begin. Now, the first thing that we're going to do here is we're going to change our foreground and background colors. Our foreground color, we are going to change this to 7270 F5, a nice light purpley blue. Hit OK, and then we're going to change our background color, and we're going to change that to 020853. There you go, a nice deep bluish purpley kind of color. Now, once you have that, we're going to go to our gradient tool. Now, you can get there by hitting G on the keyboard or by going to the gradient tool that you see here in our toolbar. Let's make sure that we are on foreground to background color. And we want to make sure that we are on reflected gradient. Mode is normal, opacity is 100%, reverse is unchecked, dither and transparency are both checked. Then go somewhere near the center of your image, click, hold down Shift, drag upward. That constrains it to a straight line. Let go when you get to the top, and you now have a nice little gradient to put your text on. Now, you can put this on any background you want. I'm just creating a quick background here to give us something to put the text on. Next thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a new layer for our text. So just click on the new layer icon in the layers palette. And then what we're going to do is go to our text tool. So hit T on the keyboard or go to your text tool over here in the toolbar. Now, the text, the font that I'm using is called Roundy Rainbows. Okay, and the font size that I want is going to be 300. And you know what? We want our color just to be white so it's easier to see on our background. Nothing else really matters here. I've got it set to be all caps. You can see that right here. That makes your text all caps. Make sure that that is checked if you want everything to be all caps. Otherwise, leave it off and you can make it whatever you want when you type it in. Everything else looks good. We can minimize that, and then we're going to click in the middle of our image, and we're going to write our text. There is Pixel Magic. Now, as always with these free fonts that you find online, and I have a link in the description below to this particular font, but feel free to use any semi-thick font because the watercolor effect is on the inside of the text, and if it's a thin font, you won't really see it. So a thicker font works best with this. So anyway, I have a link to this font in the description below. You can download it and feel free to use it during this tutorial. So anytime that you're using a free font, though, you're going to have kerning issues. So as you can see here, the X and the E right here, there's a big hole between the X and the E, whereas the P and the I are very close together. So we're going to fix that and make everything semi the same by holding down Alt on the keyboard and then using the left and right arrow keys to move the text closer and further apart. So you put your text tool right in between your letters, like the I and the X here, hold down Alt and hit the left arrow key, and they come together. Then you let go of Alt, hit the right arrow key to move the text tool over to the next letter, and then hold down Alt, and you bring the E closer. And the same thing with the L. And we'll fix all of these right now real quick, just to make it look a little bit more coherent as a whole. So once we are happy with what we have, we're going to hit the check mark up here to accept our changes. Then we're going to hit V on the keyboard to bring up our Move tool, or you can go up here to the Move tool on your toolbar, and then we can click and drag until it reaches the center of our image, like so. Let go, and we are now ready to apply our layer style to our text to make it look like rainbow watercolor text. Now it's all done in layer style, so it's pretty quick and easy to do this, and since it's a layer style, you can save it as a style and then apply that style to any text you might want in the future. So let's right now just apply our layer styles and make this look like our rainbow watercolor text. So let's go down here to our layer styles, and the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to do a bevel and emboss. Now the bevel and emboss that we're doing is going to be an inner bevel, smooth, depth of 100, it's going to be down, size is 10, soften is going to be 4. Then down here, make sure use global light is unchecked. I say this all the time, but unchecked is what you almost always want because you're going to want to change the angle of something all the time. So the angle that we want is 135 degrees, and the altitude is going to be 30. Gloss contour is going to be linear. Anti-aliased is unchecked. Screen and multiply are basically at their default, which is screen for highlight mode, white for the color, that's all Fs. Opacity is going to be 75%. Shadow mode is multiply, black, which is all zeros, opacity of 75%. Next up, we are going to go to a stroke. So turn on your stroke. Let's go to stroke, and we're going to make it a size of 10. Position is going to be outside. Blend mode is going to be normal. Opacity is going to be 100%. Overprint is checked. Fill type is going to be a gradient, and the gradient that we're looking for is going to be the spectrum. Now, this can be found under your basic standard gradients, so you don't have to go over here unless you're missing it, in which case you want to go to Reset Gradients, and that will reset to this look here with your foreground to background right there, and then the standard gradients, and the spectrum is right down there. So you want reverse unchecked, you want a line width layer checked, linear. We're going to be an angle of 90 degrees, dither is unchecked, and the scale is 100%. Next up, we're going to do 2 inner shadows. So the way that you do 2 inner shadows is you do the first one, and then you hit the little plus mark, and you'll make a second one. I already have them set up, but that's how you would do it. If you don't have a plus mark, then that means that you're not using the latest version of Photoshop, and I'm not sure how you would recreate this effect without creating the first inner shadow and then saving that out as its own layer style layer, and then applying a new layer style to the text and then superimposing them on top. But it's much more difficult that way, and I don't really recommend doing it. If you have to, you do. But it's much better to have the newer version of Photoshop because it's so much easier. So let's go to our first inner shadow, and we're going to make our blend mode of multiply, and the color that we're using is black, which is going to be all zeros. Opacity is going to be 100%. Angle is 135 degrees. Remember, use global light is unchecked as always. Our distance is going to be 6. Our choke is 0. Our size is 10. Contour is going to be linear. Again, that's the very first one here. Anti-alias is checked this time. Noise is going to be 0%. The second inner shadow is slightly different. It's going to be a blend mode of color dodge, and the color that we're using is a very deep gray, 363636. Then what we're going to do is make the opacity 100%. The angle, again, is 135. Use global light is unchecked. Distance is 0. Choke is 0. And the size is going to be 200 pixels. Quality is going to be, the contour, is going to be linear. Anti-alias is checked, and noise is 0. Next up, we're going to do an inner glow. So click on inner glow, and our blend mode is going to be linear dodge add. Opacity is going to be 55%. Noise is 0, and the color that we're using is pure white. That's all Fs. Our technique is going to be softer. Source is going to be edge. Choke is going to be 0. Size is going to be 21. Contour is going to be linear. Anti-alias is unchecked. Range is going to be 60%, and jitter is going to be 5. Okay, that's our inner glow. Next up, we are going to have a gradient overlay. Okay, our gradient overlay is going to give us our rainbow look on the inside of the text. So the blend mode is going to be divide, dither is going to be unchecked, opacity is going to be 100%, and the gradient that we are using is, again, spectrum. So make sure that you have that. Reverse is going to be unchecked, align with layer is checked, style is going to be linear. Angle is 90 degrees, and scale is going to be 120%. We want it slightly bigger than it would normally be. Next up, we are going to give this a pattern overlay, and that's going to give it the texture and feel of watercolor paint. Okay, so when I turn this on, it's gonna you'll suddenly see the rainbow watercolor paint in there. So there we go, and voila. So the blend mode that we're using is normal. Opacity is going to be 77%, and the pattern that we're using is this one down here, which is called thick hair. Now, thick hair can be found on the sprocket here. You got to scroll down to texture fill 2. You click on that, you hit OK, and it'll be right down here. On my screen, it is the third row, second one from the left. On your screen, it may be different, but you're looking for this one that looks kind of like it's angled 45 degrees. That's your thick hair. Okay, once you have that, you want the scale to be 700%, very large, and link it with the layer. And that will give you the watercolor look. Okay, the next thing that we want to do is we're going to give this 3 different drop shadows. Okay, the topmost drop shadow is going to be basically this outer glow that you see here. So the blend mode is going to be screen, and the color that we're using is pure white. That's all Fs. Opacity is 100%. The angle, use global light, make sure that's unchecked. Negative 45 degrees for the angle. Distance is 10, spread is 7, size is 24. The contour is going to be linear. Anti-alias is unchecked, and noise is going to be 4%, just a little bit of noise. You can see it right there if this video is showing it, but it gives it just a little bit of sparkle as it fades away. Layer knocks out drop shadow is checked. Next drop shadow that we're going to do is going to be this slight glow underneath. See, if I turn this off, the letters kind of fade into nothing here. If I turn it on, it gives it just a slight little glow underneath to help separate it from the background. So the blend mode that we're using for that drop shadow is screen, and the color is still white. That's all Fs. Opacity is 100%. The angle here is 130 degrees. Use global light unchecked, of course. Distance is going to be 6. Spread is 7. Size is 20. Contour is linear. Anti-alias is unchecked. Noise is only 2% this time. Layer knocks out drop shadow is checked. And now we're on to our final drop shadow, which is a standard drop shadow. It's a blend mode of multiply. Color is black. Opacity is 100%. Angle is 135 degrees. Use global light is unchecked. Distance is 23. Spread is 7. Size is 46. Linear, anti-alias unchecked. Noise is 4%. And layer knocks out drop shadow is checked. Once you have all of that, you are done. This is now rainbow watercolor text. I hope that you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please give me a thumbs up, leave me a comment, and subscribe. I do new tutorials every Tuesday. Once again, this is Geekman signing off for Pixel Magic Tutorials.